Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone. This is the Lunenburg Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 via Zoom. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. Also be advised that the town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread, and as such, all town facilities remain closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting is broadcast live through the local access channel and also on Facebook Live through the public access Facebook page. The link to join this for the public can be found on the Board of Selectmen agenda on the town's webpage at lunenburgma.gov. And if you already have Zoom, you can launch Zoom, and the meeting ID is 909-174-0347. If you do not have a device to log in, such as a computer or an iPad or iPhone, you can dial in via telephone. The number is 888-475-4499. And again, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. I will ask individually all members present. So with us tonight, we have myself, Tom Alonso, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. We have the Vice Chair, Phyllis Luck. Phyllis, are you there?
Yes.
We have the Clerk, Damon McQuaid. Did you? Okay. I'm unmuting you, Damon. There we go.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. We have member Katie Adams.
Yep, here.
And member Michael Ray Jeffries.
Yes, here.
Okay. We also have our town manager, Heather Lemieux.
Here.
Okay. Ready to go. So first things first. Do we have any public comment from the board? I know you do, Mr. McQuaid.
Yes. I just want to say that I'm only going to be joining for the public comment section tonight. We found out on Saturday that my wife tested positive for COVID-19. So she's locked in the bedroom, and I'm taking care of the two kids myself these days. Kind of assuming that we're all exposed to it now, but hopefully just asymptomatic. Since we live in a 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, I think we've all kind of been exposed, but she's doing fine. She had pretty mild symptoms so far. Would actually, we never would have actually sent her to go get tested had not been 10 nursing staff from where she works are out with it now. Her symptoms were not the typical what you hear on the news. She actually hasn't had a fever at all. Actually has a low temperature. Has had that the whole time, and she had a runny nose and not the dry cough. So it was, not what you keep hearing would be the normal symptoms, and she still ended up having it. So just a warning to anybody who feels not good for whatever reason, to still be vigilant and watch who you surround yourself with. But we're doing fine. Kids are fine. So I got to do bedtime, so I won't be here for the whole meeting.
Okay. Well, on behalf of all of us, please give Melissa our best, and I hope she remains lightly symptomatic, if symptomatic at all, and the rest of you stay safe. If you need anything, you know where to reach all of us. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other public comment from the board?
I do.
Yes. Mrs.
First of all, good luck to Damon with their health. And I also wanted to say, of course, today the governor came out, and then, Lunenburg found out that there's no school for the rest of the year. So I just wanted to say I'm thinking of all teachers and students. I don't know how this all plays out socially for kids. I have 4 of them. They all have a Google Classroom. It'll prevent adults from going back to work. And, you know, 2 of my children are in 6th grade. And I don't think any of us can really comprehend socially how it is for them to lose the input of their peers. And so my heart just goes out to everybody with all of this. Just seems like it gets worse. Not necessarily the virus, but the social impact.
I agree. Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I have a public comment, unfortunately, to make today as well. So I was contacted earlier today by the Sentinel and Enterprise to comment on some postings or stickers that have been posted recently by the an organization that is called the Patriot Front, which is a white supremacist group that decided to post some stickers, and I believe there were stickers around the center of town area last week. And I'm not part of one of the discussing Lunenburg groups that this, I guess, has come up in. But again, I was contacted today just to get a response on this. And I'll tell you, I was really surprised that in 2020, with all the things going on in the world, that people still and nevertheless are insistent on using this opportunity to push a worldview that is very clearly not going to work in their favor. I want to, just very briefly state that, our country's come a long way. And I never thought that as a selectman that I would be addressing race as, within this capacity, not because of something that we're doing as a town, but because of the acts of probably one person. And this is clearly a way, I believe, for them to get publicity that they otherwise would not get. I am encouraged by what I've been told the feedback is from most members of the community, and expressing that this is not representative of our values as a town. I certainly do not get that vibe. But I just wanted to be mindful to keep, for all of us to stay vigilant, that during these difficult times, while we were all going through pretty equal things, that evil is always right around the corner. So, just to be mindful of that, to continue to pray for one another's strength, one another's resilience during these difficult times, and to stay focused on what matters, which is all the people around us and the people whom we love. Because no matter what our skin color may be, we all possess the same capabilities to love and want to be loved. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from the board? Public comment from the public, Mr. Passios. You're on, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I'd like to comment in regards to a vote that this board took at their last meeting related to waiving late fees and interest on the tax bills due at the beginning of May, and moving or ending that on, I believe, June 1st is the way the bill was written, and stating that if not paid by the 29th of May, that the late fees and interest accrued back to the original due date would be assessed. I think it would have been much more appropriate to waive all of the fees right up to June 1st, thus changing the actual due date. People that are out of work now, many of them, most of them, are still going to be out of work on the 1st of June and maybe even the 1st of July. And I think many are even going to have problems covering their tax bill by the 29th of May. Thank you.
Madam Town Manager, I believe you probably have a response.
Yes. So Dave, to answer that, the board voted to waive interest and penalties up to June 30th. So the last possible date that people can pay is June 29th, and that's according to the Department of Revenue. So the due dates were not changed, but waiver of interest and penalties will be up until June 29th. And
okay,
that's
I apologize for having the wrong dates. It was my understanding, or inferred anyway, that you could have deferred the due date also, which would have meant no interest and penalties assessed up to that time period. Is that incorrect, the way the bill was written?
Mr.
You did have the option of changing the due date, and you chose not to.
Madam Town Manager.
That is correct. The board could have voted to change the deadlines, but it's purely a matter of semantics as far as the deadline isn't changed, but any interest and penalties will be waived if after the due date up until June 29th.
But okay, I won't debate it. This was public comment. Thank you.
I see, Phyllis, you have your hand up. I believe it is probably for Carl.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you can hear me. My name is Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. Actually not Phyllis, no matter what the screen says. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Jeffries for bringing up his concerns regarding the location of the new town fuel at the DPW during last week's BOS meeting. I'm a current member of the Conservation Commission and participated in last week's hearing on the request for determination for this work, but I am speaking tonight as a very concerned citizen. My concerns lie in two key areas. First is the risk of this facility being located within the protected area of the Mulpus Brook and putting Hickory Hills in harm's way. Secondly, I'm concerned about the impact on the schedule and cost of this project due to this choice of location. The key points I'd like to make are, when the town voted to approve the funding for this project, the expectation was that the new fueling area would be moved outside of the protected 200-foot riverfront area. It was therefore quite a surprise to myself and others close to the process that the proposal submitted to Conservation last week was for the tanks to be located basically in the same location as the current ones, a little over one in the Mulpus. Given the sensitivity of the location being proposed by the TPW, the Conservation Commission voted 6-1 that a notice of intent would be required. This is consistent with past applications such as the new Unitil building and gas station on Electric Ave, both dealing with hazardous materials adjacent to wetlands. In those cases, there was less risk than this fueling station next to the Mulpus. The Mulpus is an environmentally sensitive cold water fishery that empties into the Hickory Hills 1.5 miles downstream. After the Conservation Commission hearing, the DPW director sent an email to the commission. In it, he noted two key concerns with the decision to require an NOI filing. First, the impact to schedule, and second, the impact to cost. I fully agree with the director's assessment. Putting this facility within the riverfront protected area will increase the time and cost to this project. Our permitting process needs to be rigorous, uniform, and provide similar or better safeguards as was required for Unitil and the gas. We, the town, need to hold ourselves to the same high environmental standards that we require all others applicants. The reality is, placing this fuel station within the riverfront and following the proper NOI process will likely add months to the schedule. It will add more engineering time, and it will increase the cost for the resulting infrastructure. Much of this could be avoided if it could be moved outside of the riverfront and outside of the purview of the Conservation Commission and DEP. This brings me to the most important issue. Why does this fueling station be in the riverfront area at all? Why do we need to have to take the risk of a delayed schedule? Why does the town have to pay more for risk mitigation than would be required outside of the riverfront? And finally, even with the best and most expensive risk mitigation strategies in place, why does the town take any risk of further contamination of the Mulpus and Hickory Hills Lake by locating this fuel station within the Mulpus Riverfront protected area? I firmly believe the answer is that we do not have to incur these delays, costs, or risks. There has to be another equally and perhaps advantageous location on the DPW site that this fueling station can be located that is outside of the riverfront. For instance, there is a flat area at the southwest corner, might be the southeast corner, of the lot that has about 3 times the area proposed in the area that's proposed now. It's outside the riverfront, and it is currently only used for storage of 12 junk cars, a pile of 30 old TVs, and various other items that can be disposed of or moved. When the engineer representing this project was asked by the Conservation Commission if there were any alternative locations, he acknowledged that he did not know, as this has not been considered. It appears that there have been no real professional attempt to find an alternate location outside of the riverfront. In summary, I'm requesting the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager to take the time and effort to become educated on all of the issues surrounding this project, require a professional assessment of alternate locations, get all stakeholders' inputs, and come to your own conclusions on what is truly the best interest of the town. And of course, do all this in advance of investing more time and money into the costly process of an NOI that's based on this highly undesirable location for this fueling station. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Okay. Do we have any announcements? I do not believe so. So we go to our first appointment, 7:05, the American Cancer Society, their Bicycles Battling Cancer ride request, which their request has been changed from June 14th to August 22nd, but I do not see anybody joining from that organization. Do we want to, Madam Town Manager, do we want to address this now, or do we want to put this off to next week?
I think you can address it now based on that date and what the board's input is on that date.
So for those who may or may not know, let me read the request because this will be the easiest thing from the gentleman who is requesting this. His name is Mark Walter, and he wrote to the town, "I'm once again working with the American Cancer Society to help coordinate the annual Bicycles Battling Cancer ride, which takes place this year on Sunday, June 14th, 2020, which he is now requesting be moved to August 22nd. And I'm writing to ask for your approval for this charity ride to come through Lunenburg. The Selectmen and Chief of Police have approved the ride in the past, and we would appreciate your continued support. Before getting into the details of the ride, I want you to know that I recognize the coronavirus has taken us into uncharted waters, and the cancellation of events and public gatherings has been a prudent decision under these circumstances. I had to cancel an event I managed that was scheduled for this past Sunday. Hopefully the situation is under control when our charity ride comes around 3 months from now. Again, we're talking about more like 8 months, 3 months from now. This was written in March, so 4 months from now, sorry. But if it is not, I understand approval of our ride given now could be rescinded later if the interest of public health and safety is taken into consideration. Bicycles Battling Cancer is an outdoor cycle fundraiser that offers 30, 50, 70, and 100-mile ride options to cyclists. The ride starts and ends in Marlborough, Mass. This is not a race, and cyclists will be told to obey the rules of the law of the road and ride single file. The ride utilizes about 2 miles of Lunenburg roads, which are miles 16 to 18 of the 50, 70, and 100-mile rides. The first 25 miles of these rides are the same. The 30-mile ride does not enter Lunenburg. We are expecting about 200 to 250 cyclists in these rides, and I expect they will be coming through town between 8 a.m. and 9:15 a.m. You can see the complete 100-mile route here, and he provides the link. For convenience, he's attached a map. Our plan is to move the course mark the course a few days before the event with paper, arrow stickers, and/or spray chalk. These course markings will wash away in about a week and are essential to effectively and safely guide riders along the course. Please let me know if you approve of the ride and if you require any additional information. Historically, I have been asked to attend the Selectmen meeting, and I am happy to do so again if required, but if you're meeting virtually on account of the coronavirus, I will understand. Thank you in advance of your support, Mark Walter. So we have done this several years. I don't know the count now, maybe 5, I believe. And I see no reason not to give support. The only thing I personally would say is that if we grant permission, we grant it under the permission that the permission is only insofar as 2 things: that the governor's emergency order has been lifted, or that there is not a continued public health and safety atmosphere that would preclude us from having this. So if it gets closer and one or both of those conditions aren't met, I think they should request again what our position is at least a month before the ride, so they can take appropriate action at that point. But that's the only thing. I will open it up to the board for any discussion.
Sure, I would feel comfortable making the motion that we give permission for this event to be moved to August 22nd, 2020 for the Bicycles Battling Cancer, given that the public health circumstances and the governor's, crowd orders are in the right place, and fingers crossed, hopefully by then people will be operating socially and emotionally normal.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Jeffries, you have a question or a comment?
I have both. So as a comment, they're already advertising that it's going to be happening on August 22nd, but that's probably neither here nor there. But my question is, when this was done before, what kind of support are they looking for from the town?
Permission, first of all, to use our roadway to have this kind of event. And I believe they may have been, but I'm not even sure if there was a police detail, but any police detail that would have, they would, I don't think there wasn't. Yeah, because that's why they're pre-marking it. So they're not looking for any support except permission.
All right. Do we see any potential problem with this being on a Saturday? Previously, it's been done on Sunday mornings, but this is the Saturday before school starts.
I personally don't see anything, especially at that hour. He's expecting the riders to be through here and done by 9:15. So let's say it extends till 10 a.m. even. I mean, and it's only 2 mile. If you look at the course, it's only a 2 mile stretch. I don't think it's going to have much impact on the town. And that's my own personal opinion.
No, I agree.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with the conditions that Mrs. Adams set out. We have a second. Seeing no further discussion, I will take a vote. Of course, these are virtual meetings, so everything's a roll call vote. And I will call people as I see them in the list here. So Mrs. Luck.
Aye.
Mrs. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
I abstain.
And I for me. So 3, 0, and 1. It passes. We can let Mr. Walter know.
Certainly support what they're doing. I always think it would be nice when there are people who can speak to answer the questions, not just assume that we're going to.
Well, I think these are really challenging times, so I don't hold anybody accountable for when and where they are. Who knows what they're going through?
Exactly. And it's not like he's not come here.
I mean, he wrote the letter. Tom, can I just interrupt to say that I forget how to raise my hand on a laptop? I'm usually on my phone.
If you click on participants,
oh, okay,
bottom, and then you click on your name. If you highlight your name, you should see a raise hand, I believe. Is it under more?
Yep, thank you. I knew there was a little pathway to find it, and I didn't want to end up muted and not be able to raise my hand.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, 7:10. We have a meeting with Rebecca Lantry of the Historical Commission regarding the article and ballot question to adopt the Community Preservation Act. I'm going to unmute you now, Becky, and you are with us. Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know if you saw last week's meeting by either live or on YouTube after the fact of what questions people had.
I did not. Sorry.
Okay, so I will open it up to the board for those people who had questions about the CPA and some of their opinions. I know there was a discussion about putting it on or holding it off, putting it on this year or holding it off. Maybe before we start, Madam Town Manager, can you tell us the details of, by law, how this has to work, how the vote has to go?
Yes, so in your Google Drive, there was a informational guideline release that's issued by the Division of Local Services on the Community Preservation Fund. And it outlines the timeline for a town meeting vote and a ballot vote. So the town meeting vote comes first, and depending on how it's voted, whether the exemptions and the percentage used, that determines the language in the ballot question. So we cannot have a ballot vote for the annual town election for this question because there has to be a minimum of 35 days prior, after the town meeting vote and before the election. So the next available election, because it's either a municipal election or a state election, would be the fall state election. And we contacted the Secretary of State's office, or Attorney Costa did, and they need 60 days notice with the ballot wording.
So that's the details of the mechanics of how this has to work. So we cannot put it on the town election of this year because of the time frame between town meeting and the town election does not meet the state requirements. So we could still have it on the article and then have an election either. Now, is there a timeline? Is there a deadline by which you have to have the vote, or is that the earliest? But if we wanted, we could pass it this town meeting and vote on it next town election. Is that?
It says the next regularly scheduled municipal or state election.
That's mandatory, or that's the earliest it can happen?
It's mandatory.
Okay, okay. So just to let you know, Becky, so there was discussion from members of the board, and I'll let the board members speak for themselves, about given the economic position that the state, the people, the country, the world finds itself in, that this may not be the best timing to address this question. Again, I'm paraphrasing I'll let the other members, and again, by raise your hand and you can speak directly. Members here wanted Mrs. Lantry to be on here, so. Mrs. Luck.
The town manager had asked that we forward questions that we wanted, and I submitted 4 questions, and I'm still awaiting the answers.
There's a document in the Google Drive with the answers to those questions. It's titled Questions Related to CPA.
And just in fairness, because there are four questions with parts, let me read it for the people at home so people aren't totally lost. It's not that long. So the first question that was submitted is, what is the cost impact of this surcharge when including the $100,000 deduction from value on the owner of an average valued home in Lunenburg? And the answer is the average residential home value in Lunenburg is $332,447. And with the $100,000 exemption, that the proponents of the CPA are going for, and the 3% surcharge, the current tax rate, the surcharge would be $126.35 on the average residential home. That's what the CPA would incur. Part A of that, what is the cost impact on the owner of a home valued at half the average? So at half the average, that's $166,223,000 in home value, minus the $100,000 exemption, and then multiply by the current tax rate, and by the 3%, that would come to $35.99. For a homeowner that's twice the average, which would make the home value $664,894, again, minus the $100,000 exemption, using the current tax rate, and then the 3% surcharge being sought, the CPA surcharge would be $307.07. And lastly, what is the cost impact on the homeowner of a home valued at 3 times the average, which is $997,341, minus the $100,000 exemption, using the current tax rate and the 3% surcharge being sought? That homeowner's CPA surcharge would be $487.79. Question number 2, how is land in Chapter 61 assessed? Answer, under Mass General Law, Chapter 44B, Section 3, Clause E, Sub 3, the town, in voting to authorize the CPA surcharge, may exempt non-residential class properties. Chapter lands are classified as non-residential property and may be exempted along with commercial and industrial properties from the CPA surcharge. Question 3. How is the percentage awarded in rounds 2 and 3 calculated? It seems related somewhat to the decile, but not precisely, since several decile 3 communities have received less than 100%, and one, which was a decile 4, Whately, has received 100% in more than 1 year. And the answer is it is based on the population of the community. Smaller towns would receive 100% match if they go for a maximum of 3%. So when they're dealing with deciles, now we get into complicated formulas, but if you have smaller towns, they're weighted in favor of smaller towns away from large cities in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Number 4, question 4, based on the answer to number 3, what drives the statement that Lunenburg will receive 100% reimbursement? And the answer is that is currently based on the maximum 3% and the size of our community. I will say, as an editorial, that is a guideline. It is not, the state is not guaranteeing that. So it is just more likely than other towns who have 3% because of our size and because of the rankings in the decile calculation. But there is no guarantee. Nobody should go into it saying we're going to get it. It's just more likely than other towns. So those are the questions that were submitted. I don't know. Again, Mr. Jeffries, you have your hand up.
Yes. So I saw those answers, and thank you very much, Ms. Lantry, for submitting those to us.
One question. I have to give credit to Heather. She's the one who actually did a lot of these calculations and everything else. I didn't see these questions until later. She did call me to confirm some of this information, and I want to thank her very much for her efforts. But I'll answer your question now, sorry.
Well, thank you as well, Heather, for that. I feel like I thank you often, Heather, for the work that you do. I hope I do at least. So it brings up a question about commercial property. The note about exempting them implies that it's an option. We've had a lot of discussion in town about being a business-friendly community. What do most towns do with CPA? Is it just residential or is it all property?
It's usually all property, but there is that specific exemption for commercial property. So it is a negotiable option, and it's up to us at town meeting as to whether we want to give that option to commercial property, or do we want to share the burden equally among both the commercial property owners and the residential property owners. So there is what we put in, but there is wiggle room for all of this to be negotiated at town meeting.
And what do you recommend?
What do I recommend? I think that I don't want to say specifically. And initially, I thought it would be okay for us to equally carry the burden. Right now, times are different. Times are changed, and I understand that. And maybe we don't want to drive all the businesses out of town by saying, "Oh, here, have an extra burden." It really is up to us and the feeling of the town meeting to decide that. I don't think it's my one decision. I think these are just factors that everybody has to consider when we do this.
When we discussed this last week, I had a question about that I had presented to you before about the average taxpayer savings. And I know that was only a couple of weeks ago, but I made that kind of illustration that if we can present to the taxpayer how this is going to save them, then that may be something that they can grasp, or not grasp. That's not what I meant to say. That may be something that they'd be willing to support. But that if we, right now, where, we don't know what unemployment's going to be in the next couple of months, what we're hearing is very scary figures of 20%, potentially 30% this quarter. I don't know the impact on residents in town of how many people have lost their jobs or are going to be losing their jobs. I think that when tax bills are due, which isn't going to be until the end of June, that's probably going to be our first indicator of how it's impacting people. And what that impact is going to be on us. So I have two questions here. Do you happen to have any updates on that question that I previously asked you about the value of the CPA to homeowners?
I don't have, other than those specifics that I told you prior. Unfortunately, my schedule between working as a nurse in Boston, I haven't had time to do more research. I will try to get that information to you, and I will send it to you as an email. But I had an educational commitment that I've had to do over the past 2 days, and it's really sucked up my non-work time.
I understand. I feel like I've been working nonstop lately too, and I want to thank you for being a nurse during these difficult times as well. I know that what you're going through every day is certainly difficult, and we depend on you. So thank you for that. My last question for you is: do you think that if this has been voted down before, and the concern is that if people vote no, something I learned years ago is when people say no 3 times, it's hard to get them to say yes. And that's why when you go to things like the car lot, they try to get you to say yes 3 times. So that way it's more likely that you'll say, yes, I'll get this car. But anyway, do you think it's possible that that people will, if they deny it this year, that it will be more difficult to pass in the future? So does it make more sense to delay this till next year?
It's difficult because this seemed when we started this process, it was a source of money that was desperately needed here in the community. There's been too many things that we have not been able to find the money for, whether it is to stabilize a building that is dying of demolition by neglect, or it is to be able to, assure that a senior citizen can stay in their home because they need a wheelchair access and they can't afford it. Or any of the other conservation projects that we've either acquired land or bought. This seemed like found money that's been on the table for a long time, and we really should get after it. I understand now how, the financial impact of what we're all going through right now affects it. We could vote it as little as 0.5% just to get on the board, to put very little money off on people. And then when we are more sure about where we are at, raise the limit. I mean, I know that Air right next door to us was this year going to change from 1.5% to 3% because they realized that there was money on the table that they hadn't gotten. So you can start in on this on a very gradual basis and then move up. Nobody had a crystal ball to know that this was going to happen to us, our world, our whole community. But it does make sense. It's made sense ever since this thing started. And unfortunately, it's been presented and misunderstood that this was a tax, and a tax that Lunenburg people had no control over, and it was just going to take more money from them and give them nothing back. And the truth of the matter is this is a 401k where we put money aside and we get rewarded for it, so that we have more money to do the projects that we've already done. We painted our town hall. We went ahead and bought conservation land. We had to build, new tracks and fields and stuff. We've done all that stuff that could have been, half price, or even with the grants that were there, it could have been, 3/4 off. It's just a smart move that there's money in the state that we're not accessing, and, that we should, we just should do it, is my feeling. But I understand how crazy it is right now. And, my feeling is that if that's the sentiment, that we can negotiate at the town meeting. I know it's like, don't put it on, but it's like, we can negotiate at town meeting to what level of comfortability there is for people. And that's the voice of the people. It's not just my voice, it's the voice of the people.
Mrs. Adams.
Sure, thank you. Just in general, I like thinking towards preservation. That's obviously something I've talked a lot about over the years, but I feel like meetings and gatherings keep getting pushed and closed and changed, and with the news about school closing today and just with so much uncertainty, I'm just having my trouble wrapping my head around how I'm going to keep running for Google Classrooms and work and things. And so I feel like it's a hard time for people to digest, understand, and have a positive outcome for almost any piece of information. So I think whether you support it or don't support it, something like this is just better served to be presented and digested maybe in the fall. That's sort of what I'm thinking. And I don't know if the group sort of feels like that overall, but just in terms of, especially because it does ask for more money, so many people are going to be asking for different types of help. I can't really comprehend how we can even make a plan to do a historic building right now, which has always been on my goals and list to improve these things. And it's so much the type of project I'd love to be working on, but I really feel like we just need to digest the end of all of this uncertainty, and then look at things like this, especially things like this that have been around a long time, and present them in a time where we have a better understanding of what's happening.
Can I respond?
Sure.
My one is that it's not just historic preservation. It is for housing assistance. And that is one of the things that a lot of people are going to be struggling with. This can put a fund of money for low income and people that need housing assistance. This can put money on the table for those people. As I stated before, it's percentages that some go to Conservation Commission, some go to recreation, some go to community housing, and some goes to historic preservation. And it's only 10%. And so if the community came forth and said, the first project we want to do is give people some rental assistance, here's a fund, we can do that. It isn't saying that, it's just historic preservation. It's not. I'm from the Historical Commission and I'm presenting it, but I made it aware to all these other boards that this is got things in it for everybody else. So it does offer some people some assistance in these crazy times. And so that's something to be thought about. And it also provides an opportunity to have more low-income housing in this community where, that's clearly a need right now for a lot of people.
Mrs. Luck.
I agree with Katie that we're experiencing a period that we haven't seen in over 100 years. we're in the middle of a pandemic. I just agree with Katie that it's not the time.
Mrs. Adams.
I'm sure I just wanted to follow up, like with, you know, money being able to go towards low-income housing and things. It's asking for the surcharge to everybody. And right now, I don't think it's about low, middle, or high income, because a lot of people's lives are collapsing at every level. And it may be people in a middle income or high income who are going to become the most devastated when jobs don't come back and things like that. So like I said, maybe it's because so much news changed today with school being out for the year. There's a lot of confusion in my mind, and I think probably in the minds of people with young children, because even if our jobs come back, which mine has sort of been put at a work at home, but the hours are sort of drying up in the sense that what I do isn't available to be done. But if I can go back to work in May, well, my children are not going back to school. And so society is just in this place that I think a lot of people are really just trying to figure out how to manage all the things that are happening. I just don't feel comfortable as a selectman or as a citizen digesting or presenting anything that doesn't need to be done. I mean, to the point that I've worked on the town green and the demolition of old primary as a positive community space, and I don't feel comfortable even promoting things like that right now. It just doesn't, I can't wrap my head around day-to-day life. And I feel like that's where most people are at. And so I don't support moving forward with things for this town meeting and this town election, because all I really think is, gosh, I hope we have an election, not trying to even think what's on a ballot. That's just where my mind is. And out of sort of the awareness of different family members of mine and people with young children, sort of in my age category, there's just too much. And it's not even coronavirus anymore. It's just all of the impact of all the change that is impossible to digest. So I just can't wrap my head around advocating or promoting for anything other than just getting through all of this and then seeing what's on the other side.
Can I come back with a question to Heather? And that is, in the time frame for the fall election, where does the fall town meeting lie? And would that be in the 60-day category?
We would have
if we delayed this off the
meeting is typically mid-November. So we would be after the state election. So we'd have to wait till the next annual election.
If the town meeting article was taken up in a special town meeting in the fall, the earliest election you're looking at would be this next spring's annual town election.
Right.
Excuse me. Mr. Jeffries.
I have a question for Heather. Heather, based on your understanding of the finances, what is your recommendation?
I don't really have a recommendation for the CPA. I appreciate all the work that Ms. Lantry has put into this, and her colleagues, I assume, in the Historical Commission. It is another funding source for projects that we know that we've been faced with before, that we've had to allocate tax revenue monies to. So it would be another funding source for very urgent projects.
You know, what I read today, and it could have been yesterday, was about the current state issue where a lot of states are having budget shortfalls, and town governments and state governments are all asking for money. So it makes me wonder if we're expecting state governments to cut back on what they do. And in the last recession, sales tax were 15% lower. We have to assume that this is probably going to be worse than that. But it makes me wonder if the funds that we're hoping for are even going to be available. Because if the state starts cutting money, I imagine that something that only impacts 76 communities is going to hit the chopping block before the things that impact every community.
Mrs. Lantry.
I believe that this is already, they can't change what's already been allocated. This comes out of a formula for real estate taxes. The only thing that they can do is that they have put extra money into this pot every year as we have had, successful years that the tax revenue was good, the economy was great, and so they put extra money in this fund. But the original money is there and formulatic, and it has to stay. It just means that they can't, on those second, third rounds, give extra money to those large communities that are not going to get 100% funding. That's all I know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, this mechanism can't be changed.
Well, legislature can change a lot of things, but it's very likely not to change because it is by statute in there. But the pot of money that comes to with real estate transactions, I'm thinking that for the rest of the year, real estate transactions will be at a very severe diminished number than they have been in the past. Mrs. Adams. Did you have your hand up, Mrs. Adams?
Yes, sure. So we also have this on a under old business to discuss the proposed ballot question. Am I assuming we're sort of in that part of the agenda as well?
Well, we've determined that because of state requirements, we can't put this on the local election this year. So we don't, that question in old business actually is a moot
kind
question.
of is null. Okay. And so one thing I wanted to add to the discussion is that I think because this has failed in Lunenburg before, it would create a need for even more advocacy for the supporters to get it passed. And I honestly think, and I think this came up last week, it would be protective. And Michael Ray mentioned this with the 3 no's, protective of the long-term goals of the group who supports it to visit it at a time that is more certain. So I don't know if we need a motion or if we're looking for some sort of closure on what our path is at this time. And so I'm prepared to make a motion if we need one. But I see Phyllis has her hand up too. But I'm just saying that not doing it now, in my mind, if people support it, would actually protect it. And I don't know that I support it. I see both sides of it, but I do like things to go to the people. But I think right now, I think my personal input would be that I wouldn't want to see any new surcharges or taxes anywhere at this time. So, okay, that's all. And until
Mrs. Locke.
Well, one point I was going to make is that round 2 is guaranteed, but not round 3. Rounds 2 and 3 have been offered since 2010, but 2008 and 2009 things weren't so great. They didn't have a round 3, so the amount is not guaranteed. I actually had another question for Heather. If for some reason we wanted to get our foot in the CPA door with 1%, could you envision reducing the 2 and increase to 1.5 to offset the new cost to residents?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't support that either.
Okay.
So really, I guess the question, Mrs. Lantry, is I don't know if you represent yourself or there's a group of people behind the movement to put this on now. And so there's 2 questions. So the question is, do you feel after hearing this discussion that you want to rescind the request to put it on the annual town meeting warrant? Or do you want to still have it and then we'd be looking at a vote from the board to keep it on?
I wish I could consult with other people right now.
When do we have to have an answer by this, Madam Town Manager?
by hopefully next week. The board will have to sign the warrant by May 12th, but the Finance Committee also would like to hear from Ms. Lantry as well, if this is going to be on the warrant.
Okay, we are going to have a meeting on the next week on the 28th. So if the board is amenable, I will let you, I will allow you to talk with the people who you're working with, Mrs. Lantry, and discuss that. But we're not going to rehash this conversation next week. You're going to say what your decision is, and then we're going to take a vote on it, because I don't think any of this discussion changes next week from people's points. But I will give you the time to talk with them.
That would be fair.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that from the board?
I think that's fair, but I want to also offer something to Ms. Lantry. I appreciate what you're doing, Ms. Lantry, but one thing I try to do is I'm looking at Katie and I'm looking at Phyllis, and they, to me, very clearly are not going to support this. I'm also with them.
Please,
not supporting this.
Let him finish. You can rebut.
So based on what I heard from the other two members, they seem not interested or willing to move forward at this time with adding this to the ballot, and I am with them on that. I agree with the sentiments from Selectman Adams and from Selectman Luck. So I don't know if, I don't want to set a false expectation here that we're going to be on a different mindset in a week from now, which would then affect your ability to get 10 signatures on a ballot form to get this. Is that correct, Heather? To get this in front of town meeting? Or is it too late for that?
We're past the deadline for the.
So she depends on our approval for this. Okay.
So I would say two things first, Mr. Jeffries. First of all, I would very, very strongly refrain from suggesting the way other people are going to vote on things, regardless of what their comments have been. I mean, I think it's probably a good idea to let their comments stand as standalone comments of their own. And secondly, I think Mrs. Lantry is coming. I think she's heard the discussion. So while I understand what you're trying to do, it seems pretty clear that she probably understands those points of view, unless she was intentionally not listening.
Well, I was listening. Go
ahead.
I just don't feel that it's my authority right now to say remove it. If I would prefer to have that be a group decision, and I'm just here as a representative. I don't feel like that's totally my call, but their arguments may be very much like your own. So I will get back to you with that. That's all.
Mrs. Adams.
I just wanted to thank you for your input and apologize for the interruption, but I really don't like when somebody says, based on the way I look, I'm going to vote a certain way. I think that's absolutely unfair, but you already corrected it, so thank you.
Okay, so Becky, talk to your people, and either hopefully we'll see you back, you or several of your group back, to let us know what you decide, and then depending on what you decide, then we'll take action accordingly.
All right, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, let's go to, we have no interviews, appointments, or reappointments, or resignations. Is that correct, Madam Town Manager?
That is correct.
Okay, so current business, Town Manager COVID-19 updates.
Thank you. I'll just highlight the changes from last week's update. The Board of Health issued a further update this past Sunday, dated April 17th. That is on the town website under the news and announcements, as well as the COVID-19 Information Center page. And as of today, there are 24 confirmed positive cases in Lunenburg and 1 death. Today, the governor announced that all schools will be closed for the remainder of the school year. No decisions have been made yet as to the extension of school fields and playgrounds beyond May 4th, but the school will be evaluating closures as restrictions are lifted. All town facilities and town playgrounds are currently closed until May 4th until further notice. Based on a weekly briefing today, the Lieutenant Governor said that they will be announcing further decisions about their May 4th date later this week. and addressing reopenings. Reopenings will be triggered by data to which activities and places can reopen safely, and then we'll move away from the essential and non-essential designations. Updates from the Senior Center. The Eagle House staff is rotating between working at the Senior Center with one person there at a time and working remotely. And they're still performing outreach, Meals on Wheels, and other vital services. Since March 13th, the staff has made 385 wellness telephone reassurance calls to check on seniors. The Council on Aging has distributed 34 boxes and have 21 food boxes left that have food from the Salvation Army, the Lions Club, and toilet paper from the Senior Center. The Council on Aging has also received 22 donated face masks from Lydia Gravel of the library and 14 from a Lunenburg resident, Carol Redden. And please contact the Council on Aging Director, Sue Doherty, at 978-582-4166 or sdoherty@lunenburgonline.com to inquire about receiving a food box, face mask, or Meals on Wheels to be delivered. Information on town meeting and town elections. Just announcement again, the special state election will be held on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. The annual town meeting will be held on Saturday, June 13th, beginning at 9 a.m. The town caucus is scheduled for May 13th at 7 p.m. at Turkey Hill Elementary School. And just there's further information on absentee and early voting. As approved in Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020, special legislation that allowed the town to postpone the 2020 election and increase voting options in response to the declaration of emergency to respond to COVID-19. This expands the reasoning for voting absentee because of a physical disability to include that any person taking precaution related to COVID-19 in response to a declared state of emergency or guidance from a medical professional, local or state health official, or any civil authority shall be deemed to be unable by reason of physical disability to cast their vote in person at the polling location. There is a lot of information I will post as well on Facebook and the town website that is included in this about early voting and absentee ballots that they're available through the town clerk. Other updates include on first, state and federal updates. The number of cases in Massachusetts as of April 20th was 39,643 cases with 1,809 deaths. 169,398 patients have been tested to date. And this information is now posted on the Department of Public Health's COVID-19 website with a breakdown of coronavirus cases by city and town. The Department of Public Health has also created a dashboard with comprehensive, detailed COVID-19 data, including trend data, case rates, testing, and breakdowns by age, sex, race, ethnicity, and geography. Governor Baker today also announced that he's extending the closure of non-emergency childcare programs until June 29th. Other updates also include from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. The Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles has implemented further extensions for expiring motor vehicle inspection stickers, passenger plate registrations, professional credentials, and licenses and permits, including commercial driver's licenses and permits, otherwise known as CDLs and CLPs. While 60-day extensions had already been implemented for most credentials, passenger plate registrations and inspection stickers expired or expiring in March and April, this new action will apply the same 60-day extension to those expiring in May. And additionally, credentials expiring in March 2020 that previously were extended 60 days will have an additional 60-day extension. Regarding unemployment assistance, a new update on that is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program is now currently accepting applications. And this program provides up to 39 weeks of unemployment benefits to individuals who are unable to work because of a COVID-19 related reason, but are not eligible for regular or extended unemployment benefits. This includes self-employed, independent contractors, workers with limited work history, and others. And that website will be included in how to apply for PUA assistance in the message that I sent out through the website and on Facebook. And on the federal level, you may have heard that funding has run out for under the Small Business Administration for the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and the EIDL Loan Advance. And they are not accepting any new applications right now. But we're being told that while the Paycheck Protection Program is not actively accepting applications, businesses should consider working with their SBA lender and preparing a loan application in the event additional funding is made available. And the federal government is working on that right now. That is all I have for updates as of now.
Thank you, Madam Town Manager. I will comment that if for those people who are data driven and want uneditorialized data about the pandemic and its effect in Massachusetts, the dashboard that the town manager discussed that you can find on www.mass.gov /doc/COVID-19 dashboard, that area, it is an excellent document that just has all raw data, finally with enough to make some start making some statistical sense out of. So for those people so inclined, I would encourage you to read that. Okay, approval of minutes. It doesn't say which minutes here. Do we have the minutes that we're approving here?
I do not believe there are any minutes tonight.
Yeah, I don't believe so either. Just to announce that last week I did sign the following warrants. The payroll warrant in the amount of $780,437.89. An accounts payable warrant in the amount of $668,093.69, and a payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $551,166.79. Action file issues. Mrs. Luck.
Yes, I'd like to put the location of the fuel tanks at DPW on a future. I'd like to invite the DPW director, the police and fire chiefs, conservation, all the stakeholders. And we haven't had a discussion on this yet.
I will take that up with the town manager and put that
Thank you.
on a meeting. It will not be next week's meeting. I think next week's meeting we're going to stick with just town meeting warrant articles and our recommendations, and then all the budgetary information that we received that the town manager provided to the finance committee. We can touch on that tonight in her town manager report, but we'll discuss those two things solely for next week. Mr. Jeffries.
Yes. So I just want to echo what Selectman Luck just said. I think that I've been bringing up often where we're at with these fuel tanks. So I was a little surprised to learn that the plan was to put them somewhere else. So I look forward to that discussion in May.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Adams?
I'll just ask Heather if there's any updates from the state at all about studying that intersection by Walmart.
I did reach out to Mass DOT, and right now they're on hold. They're all working remotely, and the data that they need to access and run, they're not able to do that from their remote location. But I can check back in with her, see if there's any progress on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Any committee reports? Sounds like no.
No.
Old business. So again, we've taken up number one by default by state regulation and guideline, not guidelines, but the way the mechanism of Community Preservation Act works, we cannot have the election, the ballot question this annual town election. So we're not going to discuss it here. And depending on what happens next week, we can talk about it for the fall election as we get closer, should that become a necessity. The review of annual town meeting warrant articles. Again, it's my intention of next week having just that and just the financial picture of the new revenue and expenditure pages that the town manager has presented. Mrs. Luck.
I wanted to mention that I've looked at, I attended the Finance Committee meeting and I looked over the figures and I feel that they are way too aggressive and that I'm still looking for a budget model that does not include a 2.5% increase. I just think it's not the time. And as far as the warrant articles go, there are, I think, any warrant article that asks for money that can be put off till the fall town meeting should be done. I think any capital expenses that can possibly be put off should be put off till the fall. You know, I don't know how long a discussion you want to have next week, but there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that needs to be discussed when the budget is not where it needs to be, in my opinion, at all.
Okay, well, that'll be the discussion then for next week, like I said. Any other?
Can I ask for that?
What?
I would like to see that that budget model without the 2.5 increase. It's not a requirement. This is not the time.
But we're asking for the town manager to put together a budget, and we'll discuss the budget she presents. I'm not willing. I don't see the exercise in presenting a budget with this is one person, unless this board says that that's what they want to see. I think we should go with what somebody whose job it is to come up with a budget. And I mean, personally, having seen what she's done by reducing everything and basically working at 2019 numbers, I don't think that is unreasonable, personally.
I think it's overly aggressive. You know, we're not going to get level funded state aid. We're not going to have local receipts equal to last 2019. It's just not going to happen.
Okay. And aside from your feeling about that, what sources are you looking to provide that information?
What the governor is saying. You know, the restaurants aren't open. There's no meals tax coming in.
Yeah, so that's
people aren't buying new cars.
Yeah,
will be. I mean, it's you know, it's not rocket science. It's a pandemic, and it's an economic situation that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. Is not business as usual.
Okay. I don't hear anybody else saying that. So, you know, I'm not willing to say to the town manager, go and redo your budget with all the things you just asked for on the request of one member of the board.
I have my hand raised.
Mr. Jeffries.
I want to somewhat second what Selectman Luck is saying. That I would like to see, based on the preliminary information that we've seen so far, I think that the budget that Heather is presenting is reasonable and is fair. But I don't think that I'd like to know what we are going to do if we have a much more significant cut to revenue next year and what that picture looks like. And I do agree with Selectman Luck's sentiment that the state numbers that are in the current budget that, you know, that Heather put together, that they are level funded. I think that Heather is conservative generally about local receipts, and I don't really have as big of a concern about local receipts. My big concern is that $9 million of state aid that I don't think we're going to see. And where do we cut another $1 million+ if we need to, or is there money available in a fund that we can tap into if we need to? That's really my question on this. I don't know if the answer is not is a 0% increase. I don't know if that's the answer, but I just would like to know how we weather that storm.
Well, before I get to the town manager, I'll ask Mrs. Adams.
I would go along with what's being said in terms, I think it's easier to be extremely conservative now and then catch up and go back to normal later. It would be harder to kind of assume things are okay and then say, what do we do now, than to look for opportunities to be extremely conservative right now. So if there's a way to look at it now to be protective later, it's not like we can't just go, like with capital items and things, it's not like we can't buy them later.
Well, I will I'm sure the town manager is itching to answer these questions. So, Madam Town Manager.
Thank you. The recommendation that I provided last week is a very conservative approach. There is 812,000 excess levy capacity in that recommendation, which means that we're not raising it at the annual town meeting. It allows us to see first quarter revenues of fiscal 21 and go to the special town meeting and make adjustments.
Mrs. Luck.
If state aid is reduced 5%, if the local meals tax and local receipts are reduced 5%, that eats up 650,000 of that 800K. It's just not conservative enough. It can go away in the snap of a fingers. We cannot expect the state to level fund us next year. We cannot expect local receipts to be at 2000 levels. It's just dreaming. And you've heard all three selectmen besides yourself agree that we should look to be extra conservative. We can add it back in at the fall town meeting if our concerns are without merit. I mean, the pavement management money, they're not going to spend that till the spring. OPEB, we can put off OPEB. There are just so many things we aren't even looking at.
OPEB is funded through free cash and not tax revenues.
So what?
That means it doesn't affect the 2.5% that you're looking to adjust.
But it's money. It's money that we can save
Yeah, but
in case we need it.
But it doesn't address what you're looking to address, is what she's saying. If you make that go away, it doesn't change that doesn't affect the tax.
It changes how much money available for other things should we need them. You know, Mr. Beardmore proposed both the pavement management and OPEB at the last finance committee. It's, you know, I'm not reaching for the moon here. Reasonable people think these things should be put off. You can, if things are looking really rose fall, you can add them back in at the fall town meeting. You just need to be very conservative now.
What, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Madam Town Manager.
What the conversation was at the finance committee about OPEB was that we would need to check with our financial advisor as how that would affect our bond rating, because we'll be going out to bond soon. So if we're not putting money away into reserves, how does that impact our bond rating?
Have you found that out yet?
That I will be having a discussion before Thursday's finance committee meeting. Right now I have to focus on.
If we really want to affect OPEB, we have to start changing contracts so we're not incurring that liability.
We did change the contract. This relates to health insurance. The agreement with the PEC was changed a few years ago, if you remember, to decrease the percentage for retirees and such things. And it did impact OPEB.
Great.
By saving, I think it was $7 to $8 million.
Great.
Mr.
So you'll
Jeff-
have that information on Thursday
Yes.
about the bond rating? Great.
Mr. Jeffries.
So my question for you is, the budget that you presented, Heather, previously really did address some concerns and shortfalls that were in this year's budget. Specifically, when we were talking about the library, and I mentioned earlier in the year that they were depending upon donated funds to maintain the building. So I know that as we look into the next year, that there are certain expenses that are going to have to increase because we're not currently accounting for them. And there's also real costs that just go up. We don't have control over every cost within the budget. And I don't think the town budget is anything like the federal budget where there's a lot of fat. And, so I think generally speaking, we do have a conservative budget, but I would like to know that point that we can get to where we can't cut anymore unless we start cutting people. And that's the point. I think that if we're at that now, then that makes sense to me. And if you can let me know that, but if we're not at that point yet, then I think that's what I'm kind of looking for, is to get to that point.
I will say that we pay the town manager a lot of money for expertise and experience in coming up with things. And it's not like this is her first year. This is, what is this, your fourth year, third year?
Fourth budget.
Fourth budget. She has not led us wrong. And she has not come back to the town saying, made a mistake. We need more money. It's always been the opposite. And that's not giving somebody free rein. That's having confidence by experience that they're doing what they need to do and consulting the data that's available at the time. I don't see the benefit in making decisions on things that might happen that people are predicting, when these predictions, if everybody agrees that nobody's been in this position before, then everybody should also agree that nobody knows where all this is going one way or another. Now, should we prepare for it? She's put $800,000 unaccounted for in the budget, number one. Some of the budget items are obviously like pavement management that we don't have to spend. We can pass in the spring. And I'm sure that her and the finance director and the DPW director are going to take very long looks before they spend on this, and we'll leave it till next spring if they need to. So I just don't play the whole idea of second guessing what she's presenting as what I think is a reasonable budget with reasonable data, having consulted with reasonable people at the state and local levels. So I don't understand this slash and burn kind of idea personally. Mrs. Adams.
Hi, sure. I just wanted to respond to some of that. One, I don't think giving input is second guessing, because I think that's sort of why we're here. And then in terms of saying all the other budgets have gone fine and we haven't been steered wrong, we were in economic easy times. I mean, things were going very well economically. So it's easier to run a budget or a business during good economic times. And so this is all of our first global pandemic. And so I don't think it's wrong for anybody to pose additional questions, because indeed, nobody has any idea what's going to unfold economically. So I don't think it's second guessing. I think it's being cautious and having appropriate conversation. And so this has happened in the past with other topics. I don't think it's fair to criticize people for critical thinking.
No, but what is being asked is, by next week, you want the town manager to rework a budget by taking a whole bunch of things out, like it's just a spreadsheet that I just change one number and it reformulates and reflows everything. By making that change is hours, if not days and weeks of work. So
we're all reworking our lives though, Tom. That's what's happening to everybody.
but that means there are things that the town manager has to take care of. Lots of other things you're adding to that. Her job, do you think her job is the same now as it was before this emergency happened?
No.
And now you want to put more on top of that. Excuse me?
I said she's lucky she has a job.
Yes, well, that is a wonderful attitude to have. Mrs. Luck.
I agree with Mrs. Adams. We are trying to be as conservative as we can be. And on the Michael Ray's point of are we where we have we slashed every dime? I just talked, as I mentioned, I had consulted with the contractor who's working on stormwater, and I took $10,000 out of FY20 and another 10, it could be 20 or 30 out of FY21. It's easy to cut contracts and still get by. I just, have the departments gone to worst case scenarios? Have they cut their budgets to the bare bones? Is there anything else that they can get rid of? I don't know that, and Michael Ray's asking that, and I know for stormwater, which is part of the DPW budget, there is money to save.
Mr. Jeffries.
I think that we have to acknowledge that, Heather has been an incredibly good town manager, and I don't think that the feedback that I'm offering, at least, is by any means meant to be a slight to her professionalism, her intelligence, her hard work, dedication, and commitment to the people of Lunenburg. I don't know if most people are aware that we get hundreds of thousands of dollars. That since Heather has been our town manager, she has found hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants that is not coming from the tax base, that's coming from her hard work and research. I don't think that the feedback that is being given today is meant to be a slap in the face. I don't think it's meant to undermine Heather's good intentions and all the work that she's already put into this. Quite simply, I think that we are in uncharted territory. And, as I write budgets, I'm planning for a 15% reduction in money for the budgets that I manage and outside of in my professional life. And I don't know if the town needs to go that extreme, but I do think that ultimately, I think we need to be best prepared for what is going to happen in 5 months from now if we do not have as much money as we thought we were going to have. And I really want to avoid the discussion where we are cutting teachers or we're cutting this, or, we shouldn't have to get to that point if we can appropriately plan not to. So I agree with the direction that the budget's going in that Heather presented. I don't know. I'm not asking for, to get this thing down. I don't know if the result is a 0% increase. I don't know the answer to that. But I simply am just saying that I think we need to be at that point. That's right, where we can't cut anymore unless we have to make those hard decisions. And I think that that's where we are in as a society. I mean, I'm not sure why there's a challenge to that mindset when the government is telling us that 20% of people are at 22 million people file for unemployment. We don't even have the numbers for last week, but we know that's going to be higher. Lunenburg is not going to be exempt.
No one said, first of all the things you bring out, I completely agree with. I completely agree we need to be prepared. But by the same token, I'm asking, do you think that the town manager is not aware that we need to be prepared and that all the things you just mentioned are things that went into making this revised budget to begin with that we haven't even discussed, by the way, and already it's not conservative enough for some members. We haven't even discussed it. If you want to say, let's make sure that what we have is not that way, is at the bare bones so we can get by and nobody loses a job, fine, we can do that, and we can even let the town manager respond. But without having the discussion, without even looking at the numbers that she presented at the finance committee that she presented to us here, I've heard that it's not enough.
I've looked at those numbers. I mean, I've already talked specifically about the one line that I take issue with, which is the state aid. We're not going to see $9.5 million. So I mean, if we're only going to see 8 million, what is the impact of that? And
okay. Is that what you're looking to have for next week? Is that what you're saying?
I think what I'm asking for next week is that point that we can get to before we have to start cutting people. What is that point?
So is that first of all, let me ask you beforehand, is that what your action item is? That's what you want to hear?
I think that what I like to see, Tom, is, yep, and from the town and from Heather as town manager, is a budget that is extremely conservative, that gets us right to that point where the only thing left to cut is staff. That I think that is a prudent budget going into next year. And all those things in the budget that Heather's initial budget already had to account for were the buildings that need maintenance. You know, we can't let our buildings fall apart because we're in this dynamic. So those things become critical expenses, right? So there's going to be some increases in budget lines that maybe we didn't have in the current budget to properly maintain our buildings. So, you know, I think Heather certainly is a very capable person, and I don't want to add more work to her plate, but I think the times are the times.
Mrs. Locke, what would you like to see in this? What would you ask the town manager to present as an action item?
I'd like her to present a budget that has no 2.5% increase, that cuts everything to the bare bones, that is much more conservative than the budget she's presented to the Finance Committee last week and has given to us tonight.
Mrs. Adams.
I don't really think that changing the 2.5% is something that can be accomplished, but I just support the sentiment of being extremely conservative and looking for things that could be held off on, like going through capital items and things.
I see that we have the chair of the FinCom with us, and who is raising her hand. So I'm going to call on the FinCom chair, Terry Birchfield, to weigh in here. Terry, you're on.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me at all?
We can.
Okay, good. There's some delay here. So basically what I just wanted to speak to is, as a member of the Finance Committee, what I'm being confused by is what you're asking her to do. I think if you picked a dollar amount that you wanted that $800,000 to turn into, if you're not comfortable with $800,000 in reserves and you'd like to see $1.2 million in reserves, that would probably be something easier to work with than the rest. I can tell you that there's no new positions in the budget for next year. I can tell you that from my perspective, it's a conservative budget in terms of even the local receipts. Even though the amounts are the same as were in the budget for the last several years, the amounts obtained were significantly over the amounts budgeted. So the Finance Committee hasn't made any determination about what we're accepting or what we're supporting in the budget, but certainly we feel that the town manager is moving in the right direction and is answering all of the questions that we have going forward. So I think if you start from, rather than, I want to see it so that no people are being cut. Well, you may have to see people cut if you want money in there for the buildings to be maintained. It's kind of like I think that the town manager is really working to present a very conservative budget. And again, Thursday night, we'll see what happens Thursday night and what's being presented at that point. But anyway, I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in terms of what we're seeing at the Finance Committee.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for letting me in.
Thanks, Terry. Mrs. Luck.
I'm asking, what will we do if state and local receipts are reduced by 5%? What will we do if they're reduced by 10%? Because we don't know that, and these 2 scenarios are likely.
I think we've, been in this movie before in 2008, and what you do is you put a buffer in the budget, and then when cuts, should they happen, then you place them, and you still have a fall town meeting to make adjustments. So, you know, we're doing what we're thinking with the best knowledge we have from the State House, what is going to happen. And without that guidance, anything else is like asking, I mean, we could ask the question, do you think the budget is conservative enough? You know, that's like saying to somebody, do you think my house is white enough? I don't know. I mean, is my shirt blue enough? You're going to get a lot of things. If there's not metrics, I think the chair of the FinCom committee made a good point. If there's not exact action items and not metrics that you're asking to be met, then it's a moving target. Mr. Jeffrey.
You know, I think it's likely we're not going to be level funded. I just think, you know, that's not rocket science. And that 800,000 they think is in the bank disappears. If it's 5% reduced, if it's 10% reduced, we don't have enough. Why not be conservative now and then be able to increase at the fall town meeting should life be rosier than we think? I mean, I don't understand that. You know, we'll go with what we go on now, and if we have to, if things are terrible, we'll cut back in the fall. Why not cut back now and be able to loosen up if it turns out that things aren't as bad as we expect? I really don't.
If we identify what you want cut when after the FinCom meeting on Thursday, and in preparation for next Tuesday, if you identify what you want cut, then we can talk about what you want cut. To say we just wanted to cut things and we don't wanted to cut things that we feel are superfluous. I mean, everybody else has a different idea of what's superfluous and what's extra and everything. So if you have something specific, bring a list of what's specific that you want cut. Okay. Let's continue this. So again, the fiscal budget, that's going to be all next week. Heather, let's make sure that's the only thing on the budget. The town warrant, the warrant articles will be second. The budget will be first on the agenda. Okay. Town manager report. What?
You called on me, Tom, but I never spoke.
Okay, Mr. Jeffries.
All right. So, you know, just my final comment on that topic was I was going to make a quick note to Heather here that I think a lot of work clearly goes into these, and I'm not looking for the town manager to start from square one. That's not the position that I'm coming from. I mean, I know that sometimes when you hear us discuss this, and you know, as part of the process, you have to unfortunately hear us work through this. That there are going to be things said in the process, like, you know, you should be happy you have a job, that I'm sure come out differently than they were probably intended. And it's just part of, I think, the process here. Certainly, Heather, you know, I think that the town of Lunenburg is fortunate to have you as our town manager. And I felt that way before I was on this board, and I certainly feel that way now. And I hope the residents at home are fully aware of the tireless service that you have given us over the past several months. You know, we would not have been able to get through this crisis if it were not for you and your leadership of the staff that we have here in town. So certainly, you know, if it's not clear that we are appreciative of what you do and the work you do, then I want to be very explicit in telling you that we are all very appreciative of the work that you do.
Thank you.
Mrs. Adams.
Hi, yes. And of course, I want to apologize for my comment about someone being lucky to have a job, but it is a true comment. Coming here as the only person on the board with kids in school, and Heather may experience this on her end because she has children in school, and with taxes and budgets and everything that's happening in households, is just to think about all of so I know, you know, teachers in town and everywhere struggled to reinvent the wheel and get education going online. and their lives have become incredibly hectic and demanding. But all parents are becoming the administrators of all things school. And there's no compensation on our end. There's going to be tax demands and job loss money. And if you can imagine running 4 Google Classrooms, especially to young children, where the teachers are speaking to the children, but they're actually asking the parents to conduct a spelling test or to put together a project. So the things that are going on in life that comment probably rose from are just, to some people, they might be working from home and things feel normal. But a lot of people are losing their sense of regular life, but also being asked to administer and do more without any sort of assistance or compensation. I had to add a printer to my home. I didn't have a printer because all the demands of the schoolwork are asking certain things from us that we don't necessarily have. And so as we go through this process, and it sort of came out when I talked about the Community Preservation Act or my comment about being thankful for a job, there's a lot of people on the other end of these conversations whose lives have been absolutely destroyed and are being asked to do more and more. And just to understand waking up every day and logging kids into Zoom or Google Meets classrooms and trying to get all that in. And then I get messages that an assignment was sent in late, or the art project wasn't there, but I saw my son doing it, and the technology tasks happening. A lot of people are under such extreme stress that I think everything we should do should be very cautious of. We aren't receiving people in their normal state. It's just total chaos.
Thank you. Town manager report. You could abbreviate the vacancies, I would think.
All right. There are a number of vacancies.
Yeah.
Boards. I'll just go over the new items. Update on the fuel tank was referred to early in the meeting. The Conservation Commission had a public hearing on a request for determination of applicability to determine if the fuel tank project will require a notice of intent to be filed, and determine that it will in fact need to file a NOI. We will. I also want to clarify, as I previously reported, the town has already received $165,000 earmarked from the state for this project. So we are not up against a June 30th deadline. Updates, financial updates for fiscal 21. I met with the Capital Planning Committee on Thursday, April 16th, and based on a revised budget that I provided them of only using free cash that was provided for in the original plan, and postponing any use of tax revenues until the fall special town meeting, the committee voted to revise the fiscal 21 capital plan recommendation for the annual town meeting. I also sent a recommendation on adjustments to be made at the annual town meeting and revenue expense worksheet that reflects adjustments that include revised revenue estimates and postponement of any additional positions and additional hours, as well as the school budget reflecting a 1.58% increase. I'm awaiting a confirmed new growth estimate of $173,000 from our regional assessing firm. That would be an increase of $43,000 from the estimate I have adjusted downwards to $130,000. This figure is based on our regional assessing firm's discussions with our building commissioner on current projects that are ongoing. So it's important to note it's not next year's building projects, it's ones this year that will be captured by June 30th. In other department updates, the Sewer Commission will be having a meeting on Thursday, April 23rd at 4 p.m. to finalize the request for proposals for sewer operations and maintenance and to finalize their budget. Town Council has office hours on May 20th, 12 to 4 p.m. The yard waste days are every Saturday until May 16th, and they're open 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. The Zoning Board of Appeals will have a meeting on Wednesday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Sewer Commission will have a meeting on Thursday, April 23rd at 4 p.m. via Zoom. And there will be a Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. via Zoom. There will also, we have asked the legislators to attend a joint meeting, and it looks like they'll be able to attend on Tuesday, April 28th at 7 p.m. So that's Representative Hay and Senator Dean Tran.
Any questions on the town manager report?
Thank you.
Okay, the upcoming meetings. So next week we're going to have our meeting. So we're going to meet with the Finance Committee to hear from Representative Hay and Senator Tran. And then we'll go into our budget discussion. And then we will have the town meeting article recommendations. And then if that extends into the first meeting in May, then that last part of that. So hopefully we can get all of it through in one session. Do we have any public comment from the public? I see no raised hands, virtual hands. Any public comment from the board? Mrs. Adams.
Damon's probably not watching because he's not here, but best of luck to his family and anybody else's family who has that added layer to everything that's going on.
Agreed. I'll share that. Thank you for saying that. Okay, we have executive sessions that we will go into, not to come back to open session. So this will end. We will take a motion to go into executive sessions. It'll be under a different Zoom meeting. And I will read them. There are two reasons for executive sessions. One is a motion to enter the executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21. Reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation, and the chair so declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body, and then to adjourn the meeting after executive session. That is regarding the dangerous dog hearing with the Guglietis that was decided last year and upheld in court this year. Second reason is motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21. Reason 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and the chair so declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body, and to adjourn the meeting after exiting executive session. And that is to do with the clerical, fire, and teacher union contracts and their negotiations. So I'd entertain a motion that we go into executive sessions for those reasons.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all is in favor. Mrs. Luck.
Aye.
Mrs. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. So good night, everyone. Please stay safe, stay well, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Good
Tom,
night.
are we going straight there or doing 9 like it said on the email?
I think we have a separate meeting, right?
Yes.
So we're going to end this meeting and then we'll join that meeting.
Immediately?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.